Elias Ward sat in the cockpit of his mech, feeling the familiar hum of the systems booting up around him. The seat molded perfectly to his body, as though the machine had grown accustomed to his shape over the years. Monitors flickered to life, and a soothingly sarcastic voice drifted through his comms. "Good morning, sunshine. Ready to play hero again?" Astra's voice had a warmth that shouldn't have existed in an AI, but she had long since evolved past simple code. Elias gave a half-smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not sure hero is the right word." He toggled a few switches, watching as Astra's humanoid figure took form on his main display, a glowing, translucent shape of blue wireframes that mimicked a human silhouette. Astra's voice softened. "Still brooding, I see. Want me to run a mood recalibration sequence? I can find a playlist that's just the right mix of emo and melancholy." "Tempting," Elias muttered, tightening his harness. The bond he shared with Astra wasn't just a tactical advantage, it was the only thing that had kept him sane since the last mission. It had been 3 months since he lost his co-pilot and best friend, Lieutenant Grace Fulton, during a skirmish against alien reconnaissance drones. The grief still lingered like an open wound, gnawing at the edges of his focus. Astra sensed it too. She always did. Her personality matrix wasn't just designed to assist with combat strategy, it had evolved to adapt to Elias's emotions. She had become a partner, a mirror, and at times, a lifeline. "Elias, if it helps, I can tell you that Grace would—" He cut her off with a sharp breath. "Don't." Astra paused, then dropped the subject with a quiet hum. She knew when to back off, and that made her more human than Elias wanted to admit. The comms buzzed, pulling him back into the present. "All units, report to staging grounds. Pre-invasion exercises begin in 15. Command expects full synchronization reports from all pilots." Elias exhaled slowly. "Looks like playtime's over, Astra. Let's do this." The mech shifted as he powered it fully, and the metal joints groaned like an old man rising from a chair. Astra aligned with him effortlessly, every movement he made echoed by the towering machine that surrounded him. To an outsider, it looked like Elias was merely piloting the mech, but anyone who had worn the pilot's harness knew better. The machine wasn't a vehicle. It was an extension of the person inside. They stepped into the sunlight of the open field, where dozens of other symbiotes were preparing for the exercise. The giant mechs gleamed, each one unique in design, reflecting the personality of the pilot within. Some were sleek and agile, built for speed. Others were bulky and armored, bristling with weaponry. Elias's mech, Astra, stood somewhere in the middle, versatile, balanced, and deadly precise. Her frame glimmered with a faint blue sheen, and her optic sensors glowed a steady amber. Elias could feel her readiness through the neural link they shared, like a second heartbeat thrumming in sync with his own. He scanned the field. Around him, other pilots were performing last-minute diagnostics, syncing with their symbiotes, running drills. Everything looked normal, except for the gnawing sense in Elias's gut that something wasn't right. He couldn't place it, but Astra picked up on his unease. "You feel it too?" she asked quietly, her voice more serious now. Elias nodded. "Yeah, something's off." Before Astra could respond, the comms crackled again. "Alert. Unidentified objects detected entering orbit. All units, maintain current positions and await further instructions." The field fell silent. Pilots exchanged uneasy glances through their mech displays. Anomalies weren't uncommon. Earth had dealt with alien incursions before, but the timing was suspicious. It wasn't like the Scorva to show their hand so soon. Then the glitch hit. Every screen inside Elias's cockpit flickered for a split second, and the neural link between him and Astra stuttered, like a heartbeat skipping a beat. Elias's head jerked back, and for a brief moment the world tilted. Astra's voice faltered, garbled and distorted. "Eli, as you hear me?" The glitch passed, and the systems rebooted, but Elias knew what he had felt. That wasn't a simple hiccup. Something had reached into their connection, tried to sever it, and failed. Astra's presence returned in full force, but her tone was different now, more urgent. "That wasn't us, Elias. That was external." His heart pounded in his chest. "The Scorva?" Astra didn't answer right away, but Elias could feel her running diagnostics at a speed no human mind could match. A tense silence stretched between them until she finally responded. "It's a hack. or the beginning of one. They're trying to get inside. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The Scorva weren't here to fight. They were here to hijack. If they could take control of the symbiote units, humanity's greatest defense would become its worst nightmare. A new message buzzed through the comms, cold and mechanical. Warning, all units, prepare for system lockdown. Attempted intrusion detected. Defense protocols engaged. Elias's mind raced. Can you block it? Already trying, Astra said, her voice tight with concentration. But this isn't like anything I've seen before. They're not just hacking the code. They're trying to cut us off emotionally. If they do that, she didn't need to finish the thought. If the bond between pilot and mech was broken, Astra would become nothing more than a lifeless shell, no better than scrap metal. And Elias would be stranded inside a machine that no longer recognized him. He clenched his fists. They can't break us. Astra's laughter was brittle but defiant. Damn right they can't. The ground trembled beneath them as more symbiotes began to malfunction. Mechs froze mid-step, weapons systems powered down, and pilots cursed over the comms, desperately trying to reboot their systems. It was spreading fast, too fast. Elias felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. We need to move, now. Astra responded instantly, the mech's legs surging into motion. They sprinted across the field, dodging collapsing units and erratic fire from malfunctioning mechs. The horizon shimmered with the arrival of alien overlord drones, their sleek bodies cutting through the atmosphere like sharks scenting blood in the water. We're not going to make it to the bunker, Astra warned, reading his intentions before he could even voice them. Elias gritted his teeth. Then we fight here. They skidded to a halt as the first Overlord drone swooped low, firing a pulse of energy that barely missed Astra's head. Elias's hand hovered over the weapon controls, but before he could engage, Astra spoke again, this time with a rare edge of fear in her voice. Elias, I think they're coming for me. Directly. His stomach dropped. The Scorva weren't just targeting random systems. They were targeting the most dangerous AI-integrated mechs, and Astra was at the top of that list. The drone circled back, its glowing core charging for another attack. Elias gripped the controls tighter, his jaw set. Then let's show them why that was a mistake. Astra's systems flared to life, brighter and sharper than ever. Together, they braced for the fight of their lives, and for the first time in a long time, Elias felt something stir deep within him. Not fear, not grief, hope. The Overlord drone descended with the precision of a predator, its sleek body pulsing with energy as it locked onto Astra. Elias felt the mech shift slightly beneath him, aligning perfectly with his instincts, as if reading his thoughts before he could act. The neural bond between them hummed with tension. Both man and machine braced for impact. On your left, Astra's voice crackled in his headset, urgent but steady. Elias didn't hesitate. He pulled hard on the controls, and Astra mirrored his motion seamlessly. Her massive frame twisted with unexpected grace, narrowly avoiding the energy blast that seared the ground where they'd stood a moment earlier. Dirt and smoke erupted around them, but Astra was already moving, her thrusters igniting as they dashed toward the nearest cover, a jagged outcrop of concrete ruins left from an old battlefield. How long can you keep them out? Elias asked, his breath coming fast. Not long. They're not just poking around the surface, they're drilling straight into my core protocols, Astra replied grimly. It's like they know exactly where to strike. Elias clenched his jaw. The Scorva weren't amateurs. They had studied humanity's defenses carefully. They weren't interested in brute force. They wanted to cut the head off the snake by hijacking Earth's most powerful weapons, the AI-integrated symbiotes. If they succeeded, Earth wouldn't just lose the war. It would be annihilated by its own machines. He peeked over the edge of the ruins, tracking the Overlord drone's path. It was circling back, joined by two more drones flanking it like deadly escorts. Each one was equipped with hacking modules, broadcasting waves of malicious code that seeped into any exposed system like a virus. Across the battlefield, other symbiotes were shutting down, their pilots screaming in frustration as their controls locked up. Elias grimaced. He could feel Astra struggling against the viral assault, her systems flickering sporadically. It was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a chain-link fence. Status report, he demanded, focusing on the immediate threat. Astra's voice was strained but still laced with determination. They've infiltrated the outer layers of my cognitive matrix. I've blocked them from the core so far, but They're adapting. Every second I hold them off, they learn more about me. The comms buzzed with chaotic chatter from other pilots. I'm locked out. Can't reboot. My mechs' weapons are offline. They've got control of the targeting system. Get out of the way. The battlefield was descending into chaos. Mechs stumbled and malfunctioned, some turning their weapons on friendly units as the Scorva hacks took hold. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning metal. Elias knew that if Astra fell, it would be over for them, and likely for everyone else too. We need a new plan, Astra said. Running isn't going to save us, and the longer we stay linked, the more I risk total corruption. Elias gritted his teeth. The thought of severing the link between them felt like tearing off a limb. No way. I'm not cutting you off. There has to be another way. Astra hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough to betray her own fear. Elias, if they take me, I won't just shut down. They'll use me against you, against all of us. The words hung heavy between them. Astra wasn't just a tool. She was a partner, a companion, someone Elias had come to rely on more than he wanted to admit, and the thought of her becoming a weapon in the hands of the Scorva was unbearable. We'll figure it out, he said, more to himself than to her. We always do. The Overlord drones surged forward again, closing in like a pack of wolves. Astra shifted, aligning with Elias's instincts once more. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, pilot and machine, acting as one. But Elias could feel the strain in Astra's systems, the viral pressure mounting with every second. Here they come, Astra muttered, her voice tight with concentration. Ready to dance? Always. Elias shot back, forcing a grin. The first drone opened fire, and Astra spun into action. She moved with precision, dodging energy pulses and returning fire with her railgun, the shots slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. One drone veered off course, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. Nice shot, Elias muttered. Thanks. I'm still the better half of this partnership, Astra quipped, her humor slipping through despite the gravity of the situation. But even as they fought, Elias knew they were running out of time. The drones were relentless, and the virus continued to gnaw at Astra's systems. Every movement felt a little slower, a little less fluid. The bond between them was strong, but it wasn't invincible. Any bright ideas? Elias asked as they dodged another blast. Just one, Astra replied, but you're not going to like it. Try me. There's a burst firewall in my secondary circuits. If I route the core functions through it, it'll lock me out temporarily, but it might give us a window to reboot and purge the virus. Lock you out? Elias frowned. What does that mean for us? It means I won't be able to respond to you for a while. No link, no movement. I'll be a sitting duck, but it's our best shot. Elias's heart pounded. The thought of losing Astra, even temporarily, made his stomach twist. But he knew she was right. If they didn't act now, the virus would win, and they wouldn't get another chance. Do it, he said quietly. Astra didn't argue. See you on the other side, Elias. With that, the connection between them flickered and then went dark. Elias felt the absence immediately, like a limb suddenly gone numb. The cockpit was eerily silent without Astra's voice in his ear, and the mech around him felt cold and lifeless. For a moment, panic clawed at him. What if the reboot didn't work? What if he lost her for good? He shoved the thought aside and focused on the task at hand. He had to buy Astra time to reboot, time they didn't have. The Overlord drones swooped in, sensing the weakness. Elias gritted his teeth and activated the manual controls, forcing the mech to move without Astra's assistance. It was like trying to run through waist-deep mud. Every step was sluggish, every movement awkward, but he pushed through it, dodging and weaving as best he could. Come on, Astra. Come back to me. The drones closed in, their energy weapons charging for a final strike. Elias knew he couldn't keep this up much longer. He fired wildly, hoping to buy himself a few more seconds, but the shots went wide. The drones were too fast, too coordinated. Just as one of them lined up a killing shot, a familiar voice crackled back to life in his headset. Miss me? Elias's heart leaped. Astra! Reboot complete. Virus purged. Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with the best. The bond snapped back into place, and suddenly everything was right again. The mech moved with a fluidity that only Astra could provide, every action perfectly aligned with Elias's intent. Together, they surged forward, Astra's weapons blazing. The first drone exploded in a shower of sparks, and the second followed moments later. The third tried to retreat, but Astra was faster. Her railgun tore through it with surgical precision. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Welcome back," he muttered. "Miss a party like this?" "Never," Astra replied, a grin audible in her voice. But even as they regrouped, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The Scorva weren't done, and neither were they. "Let's move," he said, glancing at the horizon where more drones were gathering. "Right behind you," Astra replied, and together they plunged back into the fight. The battlefield was chaos, symbiotes malfunctioning all around, drones circling like vultures, and the air filled with frantic chatter over comms. Elias and Astra didn't have a second to spare as they cut through the melee, dodging blasts and avoiding friendly fire from compromised mechs. The Scorva weren't just trying to kill the pilots, they were dismantling Earth's defense system from within, one mech at a time. Astra's systems ran hot, her neural circuits still recovering from the reboot. "I'm holding up," she assured Elias, though he could feel the strain creeping through their bond. "But this isn't sustainable. The virus is adapting every time we block it." Elias grimaced, twisting the mech's controls to avoid another burst of enemy fire. Astra responded instantly, her thrusters kicking in and propelling them across the battlefield. It was a dance they'd performed countless times, but now every move carried an edge of desperation. "We need to get out of the open," Astra warned. "They're coordinating their hacks. If they hit me with another wave, I might not be able to push them out." Elias scanned the horizon, looking for cover. "There," he said, pointing toward an old Union hangar half buried under rubble. Astra didn't hesitate. They shot toward the hangar, weaving between other mechs, some of which stood motionless, locked down by the virus, while others stumbled around like puppets on broken strings. A few pilots shouted for help over the comms, their voices full of panic and frustration, but Elias had no choice. He couldn't help them, not yet. They slid into the shadow of the ruined hangar, metal screeching as Astra braced against the crumbling walls. For a moment, there was a lull in the assault, just enough time for Elias to catch his breath. Astra's voice was steady but tinged with urgency. "Elias, listen. There's a failsafe in my core, something we can try." Elias frowned. "Failsafe? Why am I only hearing about this now?" "It's not exactly standard procedure," Astra admitted. "It's a neural override protocol. If we use it, we'll bypass the infected circuits completely, but it comes with risks." "Define risks," Elias said warily. "If the override fails, it'll fuse my core to your neural patterns permanently. We'd lose the distinction between pilot and mech. I wouldn't just be in your head, I'd be part of it. And if that happens," she didn't need to finish. "If they lost control, Elias would be trapped in a feedback loop with Astra, unable to tell where his mind ended and hers began. It was a last resort, one that could destroy them both." "Do we have a choice?" Elias asked quietly. Astra was silent for a beat. "No." Elias swallowed hard, his hands tightening on the controls. "Then we do it." Astra's acknowledgement was a soft hum, almost gentle. "I knew you'd say that." The override sequence initiated with a pulse that ran through Elias's skull like an electric shock. For a moment, everything blurred, his senses overwhelmed by a rush of data, emotions, and memories not entirely his own. He saw flashes of battles they'd fought together, moments of camaraderie and sorrow, the weight of every decision he'd ever made as a pilot. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Elias blinked, disoriented, as the world snapped back into focus. Astra's voice whispered in his mind, not through the comms, but directly into his thoughts. "We're in." The connection between them was unlike anything Elias had ever experienced. It wasn't just a neural link, it was total synchronization. Astra's presence filled every corner of his consciousness, a steady pulse of awareness that beat in time with his own thoughts. "Are you okay?" Astra's voice was soft, concerned. Elias gave a shaky laugh. "I think so. Just getting used to sharing my brain. Trust me, it's weirder on my end," Astra replied with a wry edge. "But this should give us the edge we need." Elias flexed his fingers, feeling the mech respond instantly, as if it were his own body. Every movement was fluid, every action instinctive. The override had worked. They were one. "We need to move," Astra said, her voice blending seamlessly with Elias's thoughts. "The Scorva will adapt soon, and we can't give them that chance. Elias nodded, already shifting the mech into motion. They burst out of the hangar, weapons blazing, cutting through the enemy drones with brutal efficiency. Astra's targeting systems aligned perfectly with Elias's instincts. Every shot was a kill shot, every movement precise. But the battlefield had only grown more dangerous. Overlord drones swarmed like angry wasps, their hacking signals stronger than ever. Elias could feel the pressure building in Astra's circuits, the viral code hammering at their defenses with relentless force. They're trying to isolate us, Astra warned. If we get separated from the others, we're done. Elias gritted his teeth, pushing the mech harder. We stick together. Always. They fought their way through the chaos, other pilots slowly rallying around them. Seeing Elias and Astra's fluid movements, the other pilots began to trust their own bonds with their mechs, pushing back against the virus with renewed determination. One by one, the symbiotes came back online, their pilots reclaiming control. We're turning the tide, Astra said, her voice full of quiet triumph. But the Scorva weren't done yet. A massive Overlord drone descended from the clouds, its sleek frame bristling with weapons and hacking modules. It was the largest drone Elias had ever seen, an apex predator sent to finish the job. Elias felt Astra's presence surge within him, a fierce determination blazing through their shared connection. "We've got this," she whispered. Together, the Overlord drone fired, and Astra moved without hesitation, her thrusters roaring as they dodged the blast. They closed the distance in a heartbeat, weapons locked and ready. "This is for everyone you tried to take from us," Elias muttered. With a final burst of speed, Astra unleashed her railgun at point-blank range, the shot piercing the drone's core with a deafening crack. The Overlord shuddered, its systems flickering, and then it exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. The battlefield fell eerily silent in the aftermath. The remaining drones faltered, their signals severed as the Scorva's control network collapsed. "We did it," Astra murmured, her voice filled with wonder. Elias exhaled slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yeah, we did." But even as the victory settled over them, Elias knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Scorva would regroup. They always did. "We're not done yet," he said, already scanning the horizon for the next threat. Astra's voice was warm in his mind, steady and unyielding. "I know, but we'll face it, together." And with that, they plunged back into the fight, ready for whatever came next. Elias and Astra moved as one, a seamless fusion of human instinct and machine precision, cutting a path through the battlefield. Around them, the tide had shifted. Symbiotes across the field, inspired by Elias and Astra's synchronization, were fighting back with newfound vigor. But the victory felt fragile, like a glass wall with cracks spreading just beneath the surface. "I hate to ruin the moment," Astra's voice whispered directly into Elias's thoughts. "But the Scorva aren't done. They're just getting warmed up." Elias flexed his fingers on the controls, feeling the smooth response from Astra, as if she were anticipating his every move. "You sense something?" "Yeah," she replied. "They've pulled their drones back. Strategic retreat. Something big is coming." A chill ran down Elias's spine. The Scorva weren't known for retreating, unless they had something much worse waiting in the wings. He scanned the horizon, looking for signs of the next wave. His gut told him that whatever was coming would make the Overlord drones look like toys. His comms buzzed to life with the voice of Commander Harlan. "Ward, we've got movement in orbit. Scorva flagship detected. Size and firepower beyond anything we've seen before. It's deploying something." Astra intercepted the data feed, projecting the grim details into Elias's mind. His vision blurred for a moment as schematics and predictions flooded his consciousness. A massive plasma cannon, charged with enough energy to level a continent. "That thing is aiming at Earth," Astra said, her voice grim. "We're looking at planetary extinction if it fires." Elias's jaw clenched. "How long do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less." The comms exploded with frantic voices. The Union fleet was scrambling, but no conventional weapon could reach the Scorva flagship in time. The plasma cannon was protected by a shield system that could only be deactivated from the inside, and the only way to get there was through the Scorva's remaining defenses. "We've got to go," Elias said, already shifting Astra into motion. Astra Astra was right with him. There's no one else close enough. If we don't stop that cannon, nobody will. They launched toward the sky, thrusters burning as Astra propelled them upward. The battlefield shrank beneath them, but the fight was far from over. The Skorva had anticipated an intercept. Drones swarmed from the clouds, converging on Elias and Astra like a flood of hornets. Elias's mind raced. We won't reach the cannon if we get bogged down by these things. Then we don't get bogged down, Astra replied. Hang on. The world blurred as Astra fired her thrusters at full burn, weaving through the oncoming swarm. Elias felt every lurch, every near miss, but Astra kept them ahead of the storm. Energy blasts sizzled past, some grazing their armor, but nothing could slow them down. Almost there, Astra murmured, her focus razor-sharp. The plasma cannon loomed above, a behemoth of alien engineering, glowing with a malevolent red light. The shield protecting it shimmered like a curtain of liquid fire, impenetrable to anything Earth could throw at it. Elias gritted his teeth. How do we get inside? Astra's voice was quiet, deliberate. We don't. I do. Elias's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? There's an interface port near the cannon's core. If I can jack directly into their systems, I can disable the shield, but you won't be able to come with me. No way, Elias snapped. I'm not leaving you alone in there. You won't have a choice, Astra replied gently. If I don't do this, Earth is gone, and if we both go, neither of us makes it back. Elias's hands trembled on the controls. He'd trusted Astra with his life countless times, but this was different. This wasn't just a mission. It was goodbye. There has to be another way, he whispered, though he knew there wasn't. Astra's voice was soft, almost tender. I'll come back, Elias. I promise. He swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a physical force. You better. Because if you don't, he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I know, Astra whispered. I know. With a final burst of speed, Astra reached the cannon. She hovered at the edge of the shield, her glowing frame reflecting the eerie light of the plasma core. This is it, Astra said. Elias, The connection between them faltered, and then she was gone. Elias's heart wrenched as the bond severed, leaving him hollow and alone in the cockpit. For a moment, he could only stare at the empty space where Astra had been, his mind numb with the sudden loss. But there was no time to grieve. The plasma cannon's glow intensified, signaling the final charging sequence. Come on, Astra, Elias whispered, his voice cracking. Come back to me. The seconds dragged by, each one heavier than the last. The swarm of drones circled, closing in, but Elias didn't care. His world had narrowed to a single point, the hope that Astra would succeed. And then, like a burst of sunlight through storm clouds, the shield flickered and died. Elias's breath caught in his throat. She did it. The plasma cannon's core was exposed, vulnerable. Without hesitation, Elias fired Astra's railgun, the shot tearing through the alien machinery in a brilliant explosion. The cannon shuddered and collapsed, its energy dispersing harmlessly into the atmosphere. The comms buzzed with cheers from the Union fleet, but Elias barely heard them. His hands were frozen on the controls, his mind racing. Astra, he whispered. For a terrifying moment, there was no response, and then, miss me? Elias let out a shaky laugh, relief flooding through him. You took your time. Had to make an entrance, Astra replied, her voice warm and familiar. The bond between them snapped back into place, stronger than ever. Elias could feel her presence like a steady heartbeat, anchoring him once more. Let's go home, Elias murmured. Thought you'd never ask, Astra replied with a grin in her voice. Together, they soared back toward Earth, the sky stretching wide and endless before them. Elias and Astra streaked through the sky like a falling star, leaving the shattered remnants of the plasma cannon behind them. The battlefield below still buzzed with activity. Some symbiote units struggled to regain control while drones lingered, swarming with directionless fury. Yet, the moment the Skorva's control network fractured, the enemy's cohesion evaporated like mist under the sun. They're pulling back, Astra noted, her voice filled with cautious optimism. Their network is collapsing. We broke them. Elias kept his gaze locked on the retreating alien forces. Not yet. They don't know how to quit, and they're still dangerous. True to his words, a desperate final push was underway. Skorva warships began a chaotic bombardment, targeting key defense sites on the ground and in orbit. It was an act of defiance, the last flailing gasp of an enemy refusing to accept defeat. But it wasn't random. It was the prelude to a mass withdrawal, a full retreat from Earth's airspace. Their fleet's disengaging, Astra confirmed, scanning the skies. They're leaving, but not quietly. Elias tightened his grip on the controls, his jaw clenched. Every instinct told him to pursue, to finish the job, but he knew better. They had won the battle. But the war against the Scorva wasn't just about destroying fleets, it was about survival, and they still had work to do down here. Astra, he murmured, we've got one more thing to do. Astra's neural presence buzzed softly in his mind, like a reassuring hand on his shoulder. I know, let's finish this. They arced back toward the ground, Astra's thrusters burning bright as they descended into the heart of the battlefield. Elias's mind was clear now, his every thought in perfect alignment with the mech. The overwhelming sense of unity between them wasn't just practical, it was empowering. They had faced the worst together and come out stronger. When they touched down, the remaining symbiotes around them began to stabilize, their systems rebooting as the last vestiges of the Scorva virus dissipated. Pilots reconnected with their machines, shaking off the panic that had threatened to consume them moments before. A voice crackled over the comms. Commander Harlan again, this time filled with something that almost sounded like pride. Ward, you did it. We're back in control. Elias exhaled slowly, tension slipping from his shoulders. We're not out of the woods yet. We need to make sure every symbiote is clean. Already on it, Harlan replied. And, Elias, you saved a hell of a lot of people today. You and Astra both. Elias glanced at his displays, where Astra's wireframe avatar flickered to life, her glowing eyes meeting his through the screen. We make a good team, he said quietly, more to her than to anyone else. Astra's smile was audible. You're finally catching on. The other pilots began to gather, bringing their mechs in close as the battlefield settled into a weary calm. The ground crews moved among them, repairing what they could and retrieving those who hadn't made it. The air was heavy with both relief and sorrow. A hard-earned victory, but one that had come at a price. Elias powered down Astra's thrusters, allowing her systems to cool. The shared connection between them hummed steadily, comforting in its familiarity. It was hard to believe that just hours ago they had been staring down the barrel of total extinction. Now, against all odds, they stood together on the other side. The comms buzzed again, this time with a message from the Union fleet's high command. Attention, all units. The Scorva fleet is in full retreat. Earth is secure. A ragged cheer rose from the pilots and ground crews, spreading across the battlefield like wildfire. Even Elias allowed himself a brief smile, the weight of their survival finally sinking in. We did it, Astra whispered in his mind, her tone a mix of exhaustion and triumph. Elias leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. Yeah, we did. But even as the celebrations erupted around them, a quiet thought lingered in the back of Elias's mind. The connection he shared with Astra, stronger now than ever before, wasn't something that could easily be undone. The neural override had been a success, but it came with consequences. They had become something more than pilot and machine, and that kind of bond, well, it wasn't meant to last. Astra must have sensed his unease because her voice drifted through his thoughts, soft and reassuring. We'll figure it out, Elias. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it together. Elias nodded slowly, though the weight of the decision loomed large. Yeah, together. A few minutes later, the cleanup operation was in full swing. Teams were assessing damage, rescuing stranded pilots, and ensuring that the Scorva virus was completely eradicated from every symbiote. Elias stayed inside Astra's cockpit for a moment longer, reluctant to sever the connection between them just yet. But he knew it was inevitable. As much as he wanted to hold on to this bond forever, it wasn't sustainable. The neural override had pushed both of them to their limits, and continuing in this state wasn't safe for either of them. Finally, with a heavy sigh, Elias reached for the disconnect lever. It's time. Astra's voice was quiet. I know. With one last, lingering glance at her avatar on the display, Elias pulled the lever. The connection between them snapped, leaving him suddenly and profoundly alone. The silence in his mind was deafening, a reminder of just how much he had come to rely on Astra's presence. For a moment, He sat there, his hands trembling slightly on the controls. Then, slowly, he climbed out of the cockpit, the cool air of the battlefield hitting his skin like a wake-up call. Ground crew members swarmed around Astra's mech, performing diagnostics and repairs. Elias watched them work, his mind still reeling from everything they had been through. The sense of victory was tempered by the knowledge that things would never quite be the same again. But as he turned to leave, a familiar voice whispered through his earpiece, softer now, more distant, but still unmistakably Astra. "I'm still here, Elias, always." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, and he gave a small nod. "I know." The battle was over. The Scorva had been defeated, and though the future remained uncertain, Elias knew one thing for sure. He and Astra would face it together, no matter what. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the battered landscape, Elias walked away from the battlefield with a renewed sense of purpose. The war wasn't over, not entirely. There would be more battles to fight, more challenges to overcome. But for now, at least, they had won, and that was enough. Elias glanced back at Astra's towering frame one last time, a quiet promise settling in his heart. Whatever came next, they would be ready, together.